Hi everybody, my name is Hannah and this is Pepper and Pine, and today I want to share with you a review of the materials that we use for our OWL unit study. Because this is a smaller unit that was part of a larger bird unit, I'm going to share with you some of those things as well, but I'm going to share them in detail with our bird unit review. Okay, so the first thing I want to show you is this book called Owl Babies. It's a board book. If it comes in a paperback book, I think I would have preferred getting that one instead. I didn't realize I was buying a board book and my children are a little bit older, but however, it was still a really delightful story and it worked perfectly with this unit. I want to show you a couple of resources that I might not have shown you when I was putting this unit together. But because there was some overlap with our bird unit, we did work on some of the projects and read some of the books during our OWL unit study. So the first one is called A Nest is Noisy, and this is a beautiful book. It is by Diana Aston and Sylvia Long, and the illustrations are just gorgeous. So it goes through all different kinds of nests, so it's not specifically just for a bird unit. But I did enjoy incorporating this book into our unit, and I just want to show you that we did find a nest out in our front yard. And this nest had been there for over a year, so it hadn't been used in almost a year, and so we felt confident that we could remove it and bring it in the home. But I do know that some birds do reuse their nest twice in a season, so if you do find a nest, I wouldn't take it until you were absolutely sure that the birds weren't using it anymore. Okay, so the kids were part of a nature class, and the focus was on birds and owls, and so I asked the ornithologist there what bird nest this might be, and he thought that it might be a house sparrow, and so we went ahead and we made some house sparrow eggs out of the oven bake ultralight clay, and that just kind of finishes off this little makeshift project, which we really like. We did put the nest in the freezer for 2 days, as was recommended from some friends of mine in order to kill the mites and other things, but honestly, I'm not sure that you have to do that, but you can look into it in case you're in an area where you're worried about any insects or bugs that could be living inside your nest. Okay, so before I show you these other books, I do want to show you that if you can't find a nest in nature, you can certainly order them online. This one was ordered from Amazon. It was just a couple of dollars, and then we still had some extra eggs made out of that oven baked clay. We went ahead and put them inside, and it's really cute and charming, but it's more so for our bird unit study rather than our owl unit study. But since we're on nests and eggs, I wanted to show you this one as well. This one was part of a larger project in which we did egg replicas using chicken eggs, and so we have them for a variety of eggs. These 3 robin's eggs we went ahead and we put in this little wreath that kind of looks like a nest, and it just is like a nice little addition to our unit study table where we have all of our materials and our books and whatnot. While we're on projects, I'm going to show you this other little project that we did using our peg bunting babies. We went ahead and we made some owls here. These are owl chicks, and this is the speckled owl. And got one more over here. So I did 2 and the kids each did 1, and I think they did fabulous. Okay, so there are tutorials for all of these projects. You can tap the playlist at the end of this video. That link is also in the description box below, and you can find more details about all of the materials that we used, as well as links to the products on my website at the blog post that accompanies this video. You can also find that link down in the description box below. Let me show you one more project before we move on to some of these books here. This is a project that we did a couple of years ago. These are felted owls. I thought that we would have time to do it again for this unit, but we didn't. But we are still in the midst of our bird unit, so it's possible that we still might add a couple more owls to this family. It is super cute. We used a kit called Wool Pets, and you can find that link also on my website as well. Okay, any excuse to add art and projects into our unit study is a good excuse for me, and so we do try to incorporate as many projects as we can, especially things that have to do with handwork or watercolors or art. Those are all really good things to add into a unit study. Okay, I've got a few more projects to share with you, but let's move on to some of the books that I have here. This one is called Outside Your Window. It's a first book of nature, and it has these kind of unique illustrations. It wouldn't be my first choice, but they've really grown on me, and I really do like them a lot. They're very rich, a lot of color, and then they've got some verses and poems to go along with these different images. Now, it's set up by the seasons, and so I did find a few poems that worked well with the units that we were doing, our owl unit and our bird unit. But I have to say that my kids weren't super interested in these poems. I thought we could read one before the start of our lessons, but they weren't as interested as I hoped they would be. But we still went ahead and we read some of them. I really do like this book. It just hasn't been as well received in our homeschool as I would have liked. Okay, let's move on. This is a book that I don't believe I shared during the video that I collected all of my resources, but this is called Nature Anatomy, and I do have a number of books that would work with all kinds of units. My problem with a book like this is that there generally isn't enough information for the particular unit that we are doing. It's great for like a general overview and a little bit of information, and of course the beautiful watercolors. The drawings are just magnificent in here. But I didn't use this book as much as I would like. In fact, we haven't used this book as much as I would have liked in all of our nature units, but it's a gorgeous book. I still really love it. We still will use it. I'm just not finding it to be that one book that's going to serve a lot of purposes for our various unit studies. There just isn't enough information in here. Okay, so there's this beautiful illustration here on the different kinds of feathers, and I do want to show you another book in which it showed feathers. This is called Owls Strange and Wonderful, and there was another 2-page spread in here that went over the different kinds of feathers, and based on those different resources we decided to do our own project, and we watercolored some feathers as well. Now, we used the book as inspiration, but we also collected a couple of owl feathers in nature. You can see that they're different shapes, different kinds. This is a screech owl, a western screech owl feather, and this is a barn owl feather, and I'm not sure which one this is, but it might be one of the smaller feathers that goes along with either of these two owls, which are native to our area, as well as the great horned owl. My kids were part of a nature class that focused on owls and birds in particular, and so we did some night hikes in a truck to listen for these owls and to observe them in their natural habitat. And they got to also hold a western screech owl, which was really magnificent. And on the day that they got to hold the western screech owl, it molted this feather, which was perfect because later that day we did our project here. Now, I have a Silhouette Cameo, which is a digital die cutting machine that hooks up to your computer, and this is a free template that we got from the Silhouette America store. They have like thousands of different cut files, and this one worked perfectly for this particular project. You could also freehand this just on a piece of paper. You don't need to cut these out first, but I thought that they looked really beautiful this way, and we just had a lot of fun just trying to actually copy the feathers that we saw, but it was a lot more challenging than we expected. But overall, I thought this was a really fun, simple project for us to do, and it really called on our powers of observation. Okay, so Nature Anatomy, definitely a great book, but just not as useful as I would have expected. Owls Strange and Wonderful was a wonderful book. There are many books by this author, Lawrence Pringle, and all of them, the illustrations are really beautiful, and there's usually not too much information, but there's just the right amount of information, and that's a hard balance in a nature book, to find something that's captivating, but that's not just so technical and heavy. And I find this book to be a really good balance between giving enough information, but it's not too much of an overload, and then beautifully illustrated, which really captivates the students and the adults' attention. So I really do like this book. It did start off with quite a bit of information at the beginning, and that was in part because this was our first exposure to this kind of information. This was the beginning of our unit. But as the unit progressed, we were able to take in a lot more information that was provided in this book, as well as other resources, because we became just more knowledgeable in the subject area, and we were able to add to what we already knew. And what was really great was when we saw things that were repeated, it just kind of confirmed what we had already learned. I have another book by Diana Aston and Sylvia Long. This one is called An Egg is Quiet, and it's another beautifully illustrated picture book. This would work for multiple units, not just a unit study on birds, because it does go through a variety of eggs. This particular 2-page spread inspired a number of projects. I'm going to briefly show you them, but you'll get more information about them in our bird review. This one is a watercolor project that we did using our distress inks, and we used 140-pound watercolor paper by Strathmore. This is the one that I did as an example, and this is the one that my son did. He's 12 years old. I think he did a fabulous job. Can't wait to hang these up in our homeschool room. We also did some egg replicas using this 2-page spread as inspiration. This is our third egg replica project. Let me go ahead and show you the second one that we did. The first one that we did was the one with the chicken eggs, but then we did another one. Let me move this aside and actually show you the book that inspired that project. It is called Birds, Nests, and Eggs, and it is by Mel Boring. And this book goes through about 15 different birds and talks a little bit about them. It talks about the nest, about the eggs, the size of the eggs, and what they look like. And this inspired a project. We first did it with the chicken eggs, but I wasn't super pleased with the way that turned out. So we did it again using some ultralight oven baked clay. And this particular clay is awesome. It stays super moist. It's really easy to work with. And then it bakes like in 20 minutes, and it's nice and hard. And then you can paint it with acrylic paints. I did try to paint it with our distress inks, but that didn't work at all. This is my son's project, and I think his turned out so amazingly well. We used some frames that we picked up from Party City. They were heavily discounted after Easter. It had like an Easter image on the front. These were only 50 cents, and it was such an awesome deal. Went ahead and I added a plate in the front here. This is from our own scrapbooking supplies. It already came with the hardware to hang it up, and so it's hanging in our schoolroom, and I really, really love it. Okay, so even though we use this book for our owl unit study, it really kind of goes more with our bird unit study, but some of the projects overlapped, and that's why I'm showing you them now, but I'll give you more details in our bird unit study review. Okay, let me show you this book. It's called Animalium, and we only used one part of this book, and that is this section right here on owls. And more specifically, we actually used the postcard because we also have the postcard set here, and it goes through all these different really beautiful images that you're going to see in the book. And we went ahead and we used this one, and it was for an art project. Let me pull that out and show you. We're not quite done with this one. This is the example that I made for the children, and we are using our oil pastels, and we haven't used these kinds of oil pastels before, and I found that they were a little bit challenging to work with, and so we might recreate this project using our chalk pastels, which we generally use on our chalkboard, or with some other kind of art medium. I'm not quite sure yet, but I wasn't super pleased with the example that I made. My daughter also worked on one, but I think that we need to revisit this project a little bit more before we have something that we're truly happy with. But I wanted to show you what we use this book for, and more specifically the postcard, which is the same as the book. But we're going to redo this project, and it will kind of now work with our bird unit study rather than specifically with our owl unit study, and that's okay. It's all part of one grand unit study, but I did like having something to focus on specifically with owls, especially since that was part of our children's nature class, and especially because we really wanted to study some of the owls that were native to our area. Okay, so let me put these aside and show you some of the other resources that we use that are a little bit more specific for the owl unit study. We used the Professor Noggins Birds of North America game. Really like the Professor Noggins games. This one goes through a number of birds. They're really beautifully illustrated on one side, and then on the flip side, you have a set of easy questions and a set of hard questions, and the answers are on this side. We really love using these as our opening activities. We'll start off either our lessons or a school day with a game like this. It comes with this particular game covers so many different subjects in history and in science, and so I really like adding these to our unit studies because it's a great way to start out the unit, and also it's a great way to review the information that you learned at a later time in the school year. Owl Moon, this is a picture book that is just perfect for this kind of unit. I liked it. It's not like I loved it. It's not like I didn't like it. I think it worked well for our unit. It was really charming. It was about how quiet you had to be when you were looking for owls. And I think that a picture book like this really helps truly understand how difficult it is to be in nature and actually finding these birds of prey. And so going through the whole book and having to be super quiet and waiting a long time, I thought that was really representative of what we went through when we were looking for owls, although we weren't out the entire night. And we used a device called a playback, which allowed the ornithologist to play owl calls, and then if the owls were in the area, they would call back. And so that was kind of neat to be able to not have to stay out the entire night before hearing some of the owls that were in our area. Okay, we also have another picture book here. This one is called Barn Owls, and we've read this one before, but then of course I did pull it out for this unit. It has really beautifully illustrated pictures, and then the content's really simple and easy to read, and it's just a great way to open up a unit, and it's also a great I love having picture books as part of our unit studies because oftentimes our unit studies will be for multiple ages or multiple grades. And so having a picture book like this is going to be great for the younger students in the unit who are participating in the unit study. And then the older students are still going to enjoy it as well. About Birds, a guide for children. I went ahead and I added this one into our owl unit just because I needed a few more picture books just to kind of round out the unit, but it's better placed in a bird unit study. And I like this one, not just for the beautiful illustrations, but also because it's a short picture book. Some of the picture books that we have are quite lengthy, and this one is just, it's nice to be able to read something that's quick, especially if the children are starting to get antsy and just want to disperse and go play, especially since we do a lot of our nature units and our science units in the spring and in the summer. It's time when the children are less focused, and so doing something that's a little bit quicker is going to work better with their attention span. Owls by Zoo Books. I really liked this resource, and I'm super surprised that I don't have more resources by Zoo Books, but I'm going to keep an eye out for them from now on. Thought it was really well done. It has a perfect amount of information. I love that it includes pictures versus illustrations just because we have so many other resources that have illustrations, and it's nice to have some actual photographs of whatever it is that you're studying. So I really appreciated having that as well. Of course, it does have some illustrations and it has a ton of information, but it's not too heavy. My only complaint about this book is that it's like magazine quality. And so even though the cover is a little bit thicker than the interior pages, I would have preferred something that was a little bit of a heavier paperback or even a hardback. I just find that when it's a higher quality like that, it works better in our homeschool. It lasts longer and the kids tend to take care of it a little bit better. Okay, The Practical Naturalist. This is one that I didn't show you the first time. There's only a couple of pages in here that pertain to our bird unit. I went ahead and I pulled it out. And a book like this is similar to the book called Nature Anatomy in that it covers so many different topics, but generally I find that it doesn't have quite enough information for our particular unit studies. But I found that even though it doesn't have enough to complete a unit study, I always find a little bit of information in each of these books that cover lots of topics that you might not find in other books. And also what's different about this book versus Nature Anatomy is that they're all photographs rather than illustrations. And that's also nice to have a balance between a book that's all illustrations versus a book that's all photographs. And so I do like this one, but again, it's just not getting as much attention in our homeschool as I would have liked. Okay, The Desperate Adventures of Zeno and Alia. This is a book about an African gray parrot, and I am reading this to my 8-year-old daughter. And again, it's overlapping both of these units, but it's a fiction book that works really well because it is about an African parrot, which is a bird, so it works well with our bird unit. And it's a nice way to bring in something that's lighthearted but still educational at the same time. It's perfect bedtime story for her. And then one of the last resources I want to show you before I show you a couple more projects, this one's called Local Birds of Orange County, and this one goes through all the birds that you're going to find, well, maybe not all of them, but a good number of them that you're going to find in Orange County, and that's where we live. And so having a field guide like this is really going to help us out. I have to say that it lists so many birds, not just the ones that you're likely to see, but the ones that are really hard to find. But I appreciate knowing that there are these birds that are native to this area, or actually sometimes they're not native. It's a whole other story, but it's nice to know that they are in this area and that we can look for them. And it's also nice to know the different names of each of these birds, because a lot of times you might just say sparrow or hummingbird and you realize, oh, there's actually a number of them. And so this has come in handy. One project that I have yet to show you, that I will be showing you with our bird unit study review, are flashcards on each of these, well, not on each of these, on several of these birds. I found that my son only did one entry in his main lesson book, and that's just because we did so many projects and other activities for this unit that he didn't have a lot of written content, and I would prefer that we have a little bit more written content just to solidify some of the things that we learned. And so while I would prefer that he does a few more entries in his main lesson book, if he doesn't, at least we're going to have a number of flashcards for the birds that we want, that, you know, he'll choose some and I'll choose some, and then we will make them trivia based. So that makes it a little bit more interesting rather than just a flashcard. Okay, I want to show you one more project that we did. This is Owl Pellet Field Biology. This is a kit that we picked up from Rainbow Resource. It comes with 3 owl pellets that were really large, as well as the other materials that you'll need to dissect them. And it came with this field biology kit guide, and this was perfect. Having this guide was really important for us rather than just finding our owl pellets in nature, because we started to try to figure out which bones we were finding in the owl pellet. And as we pieced all the bones together, we found that we could make an entire rodent skeleton. So we went ahead and we glued it down on some watercolor paper. My son labeled all the different parts of the skeleton. As you can see, he just copied this diagram right here. And then we framed it again with those 50-cent frames that we got from Party City. Went ahead and added a little tile plate in the front, and I am super pleased with the way that this project turned out. We also were sent some owl pellets from a friend from her property, and we dissected those as well, and then we took the extra ones and we left them inside this box so that the next time we do this unit, or if we want to just do another owl pellet dissection, we have all the materials ready for us to go. Okay, so the last thing I want to show you is my lesson plan for this unit, and I have one on birds, but I want to show you the one on owls here. And you can find this on my website, the blog post that accompanies our entire owl unit study. I went through, and this is how I lesson planned for this particular unit. It wasn't a daily lesson plan. It was more of a to-do list. And whenever we had time, we fit things in. So nothing was in order. If we had a block of time to do a project, we would do a project. If we only had like 15 minutes to do something, we might play a game or read a story. But this worked really well for this particular unit. It probably took longer to achieve all of these things since I didn't have something mapped out on a day-to-day basis, but I found that we still achieved everything in a really efficient manner. Okay, so I wrote down all of the books that I wanted for this unit, as well as some that aren't listed here that were part of our bird unit that we read as well. So I just put a little check next to everything that we did. There was one more thing that we did not complete, our DIY bird flashcards. So that's something that we'll just carry over to our bird unit, but at the same time we did some of the bird unit activities with this unit, so I think it all kind of works out in the end. We did have a number of classes and outings for this particular unit. I don't usually have a lot of classes and outings for our unit studies, but this particular unit study was inspired by a nature class that my kids were taking that had a focus on birds and owls, and so that's how this unit came about. Okay, and I want to briefly show you our OWL unit study here. It's going to be more books and resources and activities that go along with this unit, but this is my first pass at kind of our to-do list for this unit. And again, you can find this on the blog post that accompanies our bird unit study. Okay, so I think that was everything for this particular review. If you have any questions about it, please leave them down in the comment section below. You can find more information on my website at pepperandpine.com. And if you want to see how our homeschool is progressing on a daily basis, you can find me on Instagram at pepperandpine.